Voting in New Hampshire is underway today in the first-in-the-nation presidential primary. The first 3 polling places in the Granite State actually opened at midnight in the towns of Dixville Notch, Hart's Location, and Millsfield.
This Tuesday marks a crucial day for nearly all of the Democratic presidential hopefuls. Candidates can see the finish line after hundreds of campaign events in New Hampshire leading up to the big vote today.
So for more on this, let's bring in Dante Scala. He's a political science professor at the University of New Hampshire. Thank you so much for joining us. So Pete Buttigieg and Senator Bernie Sanders, they're leading in the polls in New Hampshire. What areas of the state is sort of most of the support coming from for these two men, and what's appealing to voters about them?
So Bernie Sanders has his main support will come from college towns, like where I teach in Durham at the University of New Hampshire. He'll get it from progressive voters, and he'll get votes from his backyard. That's the Connecticut River Valley, which is the western edge of the state bordering Vermont. Pete Buttigieg, it's a little more difficult to define, but I suspect that he's going to do very well today in New Hampshire's suburbs, which are basically the outer ring of Boston in 2 counties, Hillsborough and Rockingham, that adjoin Massachusetts.
As you know, Dante, Bernie Sanders won New Hampshire back in when he was facing Hillary Clinton and in the nomination battle. And I wonder how the state's congressional districts vary in their political geography and how that could impact how delegates are awarded to the candidates. In other words, if Senator Sanders comes in first and Mayor Pete comes in second.
Yeah, so 2 congressional districts in New Hampshire, and they basically divide the state in half. The western half is the 2nd congressional district, and that is the more Democratic-leaning, more progressive of the 2. And of course, that's also Bernie Sanders' backyard. So I would think he would do especially well there. Then the 1st district is more of a classic swing congressional district, which doesn't lean too far Democratic or Republican. I would think Pete Buttigieg would do better in that 1st district. What will be interesting to me, keep in mind that to earn delegates, a candidate has to pass a 15% of the vote threshold. So it's possible tonight that the 3rd place finisher might wind up leaving New Hampshire without any delegates, and that the first 2, 1st and 2nd place, might split all of the 24 delegates that are available tonight.
So this is all happening, right, in the wake of the confusion and chaos that turned out to be the Iowa caucuses. Do you think what happened in Iowa is going to have any sort of impact on how things turn out in New Hampshire?
Well, 2 things. One, it certainly put our state government, local government officials on alert not to have a repeat of the Iowa caucuses. And our primary is publicly run. It's not run by a political party. And our officials have a lot of experience because we have a lot of elections, big and small, in New Hampshire. In terms of Iowa's results, I do think even though it was such a mess, that nonetheless Iowa transmitted important information to New Hampshire voters, because the one candidate who surprised in Iowa, Pete Buttigieg, did surge in the polls last week. And the one candidate who more than anyone else disappointed in Iowa, Joe Biden, has been skidding downward in the New Hampshire polls ever since. So it was the case that New Hampshire voters did take Iowa into account, even though it took a while to figure out exactly what Iowa was telling us.
So, as you know, New Hampshire has one of the nation's lowest percentages of native-born residents. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah,
that's really fascinating. Yeah. So what does that say about the state's demographics and how people in the state vote?
You know, we tend to be, the old stereotype is of the Yankee Republican whose family has lived here for 12 generations in the plaid shirt and so forth. But in reality, there's a lot of turnover every 4 years even in terms of new voters to the process. And you've got a lot of voters who have the resources to move up here, and they tend to move into, 2 types. One is into the suburbs, adjoining Massachusetts. They move up here for lower housing costs, for example, and lower taxes. And those are working families. But then there are also retirees who come from, say, New Jersey or New York. They move up here, at least for the summer and fall months, for the foliage. They might go down south for the winter, but they bring their politics with them. You know, it's unlikely a 60, 65-year-old is going to change her party affiliation. So they've been helping to convert the state from a red Republican state a few decades ago to the purple state it is now.
That's interesting. Do you anticipate any last-minute surprises? We didn't get a chance to talk about Amy Klobuchar before, but, you know, what's your take?
Yeah, I anticipate that there's something out there that's happening that I didn't see coming, and I'll spend the rest of the year thinking about why I missed it. There's always a
Very
surprise
specific.
in New Hampshire. Yeah, because it's, you know, it's such a volatile electorate. And now certainly I think Amy Klobuchar did a lot to help herself last Friday night at the debate. And so I think she, to me, is the surprise factor today. How high can she take that bounce? Because there was a lot of very encouraging media reports about Klobuchar all weekend while Joe Biden and Pete Buttigieg were going back and forth. And it's always good in the final days to be the so-called positive alternative, a candidate who stays upbeat while others go negative. So I think keep an eye on Amy Klobuchar tonight. If she can finish third, even second, that would be quite a boost. But in the money, that will help her to find a path forward perhaps to Nevada and South Carolina.
All right, really interesting stuff. Dante Scala, thank you very much.
You're welcome.